Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we begin a deep and detailed journey into the fascinating history of the 2 euro cent and 5 euro cent coins, two of the smallest denominations in the euro currency system, yet among the most meaningful when it comes to understanding the birth of the euro and the idea of European unity, because these coins were introduced as part of one of the most ambitious monetary projects in human history, when multiple sovereign nations decided to abandon their national currencies and adopt a single shared currency to strengthen economic cooperation, stability, and integration across Europe. And before the euro, everyday transactions in countries like Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands were carried out using completely different coins and banknotes, each deeply tied to national identity. So when the euro was officially launched for accounting purposes in 1999 and then entered physical circulation in 2002, the appearance of the 2 cent and 5 cent coins in people's pockets marked a dramatic shift in daily life, and these coins were designed with a clear philosophy in mind, where the reverse side would be common across all Eurozone countries to symbolize unity, while the obverse side would remain national to preserve cultural identity, and the common reverse design, created by Belgian designer Luc Louix, shows a globe with Europe highlighted, representing Europe's place in the wider world, surrounded by 12 stars symbolizing unity, harmony, and equality among member states, and this design appears on both the 2 euro cent and the 5 euro cent coins, instantly linking them to the broader euro family, while the obverse sides vary widely from country to country, making these coins especially attractive to collectors, and the 2 euro cent coin, made of copper-plated steel with a diameter of 18.75 millimeters and a smooth edge, was intended to handle precise pricing and small transactions during the early years of the euro, helping consumers adapt from old currencies where small denominations were common, while the 5 euro cent coin, slightly larger at 21.25 millimeters and featuring a distinctive edge groove, served as a more practical everyday unit, often replacing similar low-value coins from pre-euro systems, and together these two coins became the backbone of small change across the Eurozone, used millions of times every day in markets, public transport, cafes, and shops, and yet despite their frequent use, many people never stopped to consider the historical weight they carried, because each 2 and 5 cent coin was a physical reminder that borders had softened economically, that trade and travel were becoming easier, and that Europe was attempting something never before achieved on such a scale, and from the very first mintings, these coins reflected both optimism and controversy, as debates quickly emerged about production costs, usefulness, and long-term survival, especially for the 2 cent coin, which some countries would later phase out of daily use through rounding rules, while others continued to mint and circulate them normally, and this divergence in usage patterns would later add another layer of interest for collectors and historians alike, making the early years of 2 and 5 euro cent coinage a crucial foundation for understanding everything that followed in the euro's ongoing story. Continuing deeper into the story in this next stage, the real beauty of the 2 euro cent and 5 euro cent coins begins to appear when we look closely at how each participating country used these small denominations as a canvas to express national identity within a shared monetary system. Because while the reverse side remained identical across all Eurozone nations to reinforce unity, the obverse side was where history, culture, politics, and symbolism came alive, and this is what transformed ordinary pocket change into miniature historical documents, as countries selected designs that reflected centuries of heritage, from royal portraits and national coats of arms to famous monuments and symbolic animals, and when these designs were first approved in the late 1990s, there was intense discussion within each nation about what image should represent them across Europe, knowing that these coins would circulate far beyond national borders, and for the 2 and 5 cent coins especially, which would be among the most widely handled denominations, the choice carried special weight, and as a result, Germany chose the Brandenburg Gate, a symbol of unity and freedom following reunification. Italy selected iconic architecture such as the Colosseum to emphasize its ancient legacy. France opted for symbols reflecting republican values and stability, while smaller nations like Austria, Portugal, Greece, and Spain highlighted designs rooted in national pride and historical continuity. And at the same time, constitutional monarchies such as Belgium, the Netherlands, and later Spain featured portraits of reigning monarchs, which subtly introduced changes over time as rulers aged, abdicated, or passed away, creating natural design transitions that are now of great interest to collectors. And from a technical perspective, both the 2 and 5 euro cent coins were struck in massive quantities during the early 2000s, especially by large economies like Germany, France, Italy, and Spain. Because the transition to the euro required enormous volumes of coinage to replace national currencies almost overnight, and this initial flood of coins explains why early dates are still commonly found in circulation today. Yet despite these high mintages, condition becomes a crucial factor in numismatics, because coins that circulated heavily in vending machines, transport systems, and daily commerce often show significant wear, making uncirculated examples from early years surprisingly scarce in top condition, and this is where mint sets, proof issues, and carefully preserved rolls gain importance, especially for collectors aiming to build high-quality sets of both 2 and 5 cent coins by country and year, and as the Eurozone expanded in later years with countries like Slovenia, Slovakia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Malta, and Cyprus adopting the euro. New designs were introduced into the system, instantly adding complexity and excitement to collecting these denominations. Because each new country meant 2 more coins, each carrying fresh symbolism and often produced in much lower quantities than the original founding members, and these later adopters are particularly important when discussing the future value of 2 and 5 cent coins, as lower mintages combined with reduced usage in some regions create natural scarcity. And another layer of fascination comes from the special status of microstates such as Vatican City, San Marino, and Monaco, which issue euro coins under monetary agreements and produce extremely limited quantities that are almost never released into circulation. And even though these states issue the same denominations, including the 2 and 5 cent coins, their pieces are primarily sold directly to collectors in official sets, instantly elevating their desirability and market value. And this contrast between mass circulation coins and collector-only issues highlights how the same denomination can exist simultaneously as everyday money and as a premium collectible, and beyond official mintages. Mint errors play a critical role in elevating the interest of these coins, because copper-plated steel coins are particularly susceptible to striking and plating anomalies, including missing copper layers that expose the steel core, off-center strikes that distort the design, weak strikes that soften details, and doubled elements that create visual drama. And when such errors are authenticated, they often sell for prices far exceeding face value, proving once again that rarity and uniqueness, not denomination, determine value in numismatics. And when we step back and view the 2 euro cent and 5 euro cent coins together at this stage of the story, they emerge not as insignificant change, but as witnesses to economic transformation, political cooperation, and evolving attitudes toward money itself, capturing a moment in history when Europe attempted to balance national identity with collective progress through the smallest units of currency imaginable. As we move further into the story of the 2 euro cent and 5 euro cent coins, the focus naturally shifts from their origins and designs to their real-world circulation, public perception, and the economic debates that have surrounded these small denominations since the very beginning, because while the euro was created to simplify trade and travel, the practical usefulness of the smallest coins quickly became a topic of intense discussion across Europe, and nowhere was this more evident than with the 2 euro cent coin, which despite being legal tender in all Eurozone countries, began to face criticism due to its low purchasing power and the rising cost of production, especially as metal prices increased, and studies conducted in several countries showed that producing and distributing a 2-cent coin sometimes cost more than its face value, leading governments, economists, and central banks to question whether it still made sense to keep minting and circulating it, and this debate eventually resulted in a unique situation where the Eurozone remained unified in currency but divided in cash usage practices, as countries like Finland, the Netherlands, Ireland, Belgium, and later Italy introduced rounding systems that effectively removed the 1 and 2 cent coins from everyday cash transactions, while still recognizing them as legal tender, meaning that prices could still be set in exact amounts, but final cash totals were rounded to the nearest 5 cents, and this policy change had a profound impact on the circulation of the 2-cent coin, dramatically reducing its presence in daily commerce within those countries, while other nations such as Germany, Austria, and Spain continued to use and mint the coin normally. And this uneven circulation created fascinating patterns for collectors, because coins from rounding countries became less worn over time, while those from non-rounding countries continued to circulate heavily, and in contrast, the 5 euro cent coin largely avoided this controversy, as it was widely viewed as a practical and necessary denomination that still held meaningful purchasing power, making it essential for pricing strategies and small transactions, and as a result, the 5-cent coin continued to circulate strongly across nearly all Eurozone countries, becoming the lowest denomination commonly accepted in rounding systems and effectively serving as the foundation of physical cash transactions in many regions. And from a numismatic perspective, these economic decisions significantly influenced mintages, because countries that reduced usage of the smallest coins also reduced production, sometimes sharply, leading to lower annual mintages for both 2 and 5 cent coins in certain years. And these lower mintage years are already gaining attention among collectors who understand that modern scarcity often develops quietly and only becomes obvious years later. And another critical factor shaping circulation was the rise of digital payments, contactless cards, and mobile wallets, which gradually reduced reliance on physical coins altogether, especially for low-value transactions, and this technological shift further accelerated the decline in everyday use of small denominations, turning the 2 and 5 cent coins from essential tools of commerce into objects more commonly stored in jars, drawers, and forgotten purses. And yet this decline paradoxically increased their historical significance, because future generations may view these coins as symbols of the transitional period between cash-dominated economies and digital finance, and collectors who recognize this pattern often focus on preserving high-quality examples from the final years of active circulation, anticipating that demand will rise as availability decreases, and at the same time, central banks and mints began experimenting with improved production techniques to extend coin lifespan, especially for copper-plated steel coins, whose magnetic properties also made them compatible with vending machines and automated systems, highlighting how even the smallest coins required careful engineering to function smoothly in modern economies. And when we consider all these factors together, the story of the 2 euro cent and 5 euro cent coins becomes far more complex than their face value suggests, revealing a dynamic interplay between economics, technology, public opinion, and policy decisions that continue to shape their role within the euro system today. Building on this deeper understanding, the next layer of the story focuses on collecting strategies, rarity, and the specific factors that determine why certain 2 euro cent and 5 euro cent coins are far more desirable than others, even though to the average person they may all look similar, because in numismatics value is shaped not by denomination but by a combination of mintage numbers, country of issue, condition, demand, and historical context, and one of the first lessons collectors learn is that high mintage countries such as Germany, France, Italy, and Spain produced hundreds of millions of 2 and 5 cent coins during the early years of the euro, making most circulated examples extremely common. Yet even within these common issues there are exceptions, particularly in years where production dropped sharply due to reduced demand or policy changes, creating subtle rarities that only become apparent when mint records are closely examined, and this is why knowledgeable collectors pay close attention to annual mint reports, because a 2 or 5 cent coin from a large country with an unusually low mintage year can become far more valuable over time than a higher mintage coin from a smaller country. And speaking of smaller countries, Eurozone members such as Malta, Cyprus, Slovenia, Slovakia, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania generally produced much lower quantities of coins compared to the founding members, and their early euro issues are especially important, because they represent the moment those nations joined the shared currency, giving their coins strong historical appeal. And within this group, condition becomes critical, as uncirculated and proof examples from first euro years are significantly scarcer than worn circulation pieces. And then there are the microstates, which occupy a completely different level of desirability, as Vatican City, San Marino, and Monaco issue euro coins in extremely limited quantities under special agreements, and their 2 and 5 cent coins are rarely, if ever, found in circulation, instead being sold directly to collectors in official mint sets. And because of this controlled distribution, even the lowest denominations from these microstates can command prices many times higher than face value, especially in proof condition, and Monaco issues in particular are known for strong demand due to very low mintages and global collector interest. And beyond official issues, error coins represent one of the most exciting areas of collecting for both the 2 and 5 euro cent denominations, because the copper-plated steel composition makes them prone to visible and dramatic errors, including missing or partial copper plating that exposes the steel core, creating a striking silver-colored appearance, as well as off-center strikes, broad strikes, double strikes, misaligned dies, and clipped planchets, all of which can significantly increase a coin's value when authenticated, and collectors often search through rolls of coins or accumulated change specifically looking for these anomalies, knowing that a single error coin can be worth more than thousands of normal examples combined. And another often overlooked factor is edge variety and strike quality, particularly on the 5 cent coin, whose edge groove must be clean and well-defined, as weak or irregular edges can indicate minting issues that add collectible interest. And as grading services become more influential in modern numismatics, professionally graded 2 and 5 cent coins in high mint state levels gain credibility and liquidity in the market, making them more attractive to serious collectors and investors. And when all of these elements are considered together, it becomes clear that collecting the 2 euro cent and 5 euro cent coins is not about chasing high face value, but about understanding patterns, spotting subtle differences, and appreciating how modern coinage reflects broader economic and political trends, turning everyday change into a sophisticated and rewarding field of study. As we enter the final phase of this exploration, the long-term future and lasting significance of the 2 euro cent and 5 euro cent coins come into sharp focus, because these small denominations sit at the crossroads of tradition and transformation in the modern monetary world, and their fate is closely tied to how societies choose to balance physical cash with rapidly advancing digital payment systems. And over the past 2 decades, the role of coins in everyday life has steadily declined, especially among younger generations who increasingly rely on cards, mobile apps, and online transactions for even the smallest purchases, and this shift has already changed how often the 2 and 5 cent coins circulate, with many people encountering them less frequently or setting them aside rather than spending them, and from a historical perspective this pattern mirrors earlier transitions, such as the disappearance of low-value coins in previous monetary systems, which today are often highly collectible because they represent denominations that no longer serve a practical role, and this parallel has led many collectors and numismatic researchers to view the 2-euro-cent coin in particular as a future end-of-an-era piece, especially in countries that have already implemented rounding and effectively removed it from daily use, and as mintages continue to decline in response to reduced demand, the availability of new examples may become increasingly limited, setting the stage for long-term scarcity that could drive collector interest upward over time, and the 5-euro-cent coin, while currently more secure in its role, is not immune to these trends, as its future will depend on how long cash remains relevant for small transactions and whether inflation further erodes its purchasing power, and beyond economics, these coins hold cultural and educational significance, because they have introduced millions of people to the concept of a shared European identity, with children often learning geography and history by collecting coins from different countries and comparing obverse designs, and this educational impact cannot be overstated, as it has helped transform everyday money into a tool for learning and curiosity, and from a design perspective, the euro-cent coins represent a unique compromise between uniformity and diversity, showing how multiple nations can share a common framework while retaining individual expression, a concept that extends far beyond numismatics into politics, culture, and social cooperation, and as time passes, early issues of the 2 and 5 cent coins from the first years of euro circulation will likely gain increased historical importance, much like early decimal coinage or first-issue national currencies in other parts of the world. And collectors who focus on preserving high-quality examples today may be safeguarding artifacts that future generations will study as symbols of Europe's early 21st century transformation, and ultimately, when the 2-euro-cent and 5-euro-cent coins are viewed not simply as small change but as historical witnesses, their true value becomes clear, because they tell a story of ambition, unity, debate, adaptation, and progress, all compressed into the smallest units of a currency that reshaped an entire continent. In bringing this long journey to its conclusion, the 2-euro-cent and 5-euro-cent coins can be fully appreciated not merely as denominations of money, but as enduring records of how societies evolve, compromise, and redefine value over time, because these coins were born at a moment when Europe chose cooperation over fragmentation, creating a shared monetary language that millions of people would use every day without needing to exchange or convert currencies at borders, and while their face value is small, their symbolic weight is immense, representing trust between nations, coordinated economic policy, and a collective willingness to adapt, and as debates continue about whether the smallest coins should remain in circulation, their existence captures a unique tension between efficiency and tradition, as governments weigh cost savings and convenience against public familiarity and historical continuity, and this very debate adds to their future appeal, because coins that are questioned, reduced, or eventually withdrawn often become markers of change that collectors and historians later study closely, and for those who collect the 2 and 5-euro-cent coins today, the appeal lies not in instant profit but in long-term perspective, understanding that modern coins gain significance as they age, as circulation patterns shift, and as mintages decline. And this is particularly true for early issues from 2002 and the years immediately following, which mark the first physical expression of the euro in daily life, as well as for coins from countries that later adopted rounding or sharply reduced production, and when preserved in uncirculated or proof condition, these coins serve as time capsules from the early euro era, and beyond collecting, there is also a deeply human element to these small denominations, because nearly everyone who has lived in the eurozone since 2002 has handled them, dropped them, saved them, or ignored them, making them shared objects of memory across generations, and future historians may look at jars of forgotten cent coins as evidence of a society transitioning away from cash. Much like today, we view obsolete coins from earlier centuries as relics of past economic systems, and in this sense, the 2-euro-cent and 5-euro-cent coins occupy a quiet but important place in monetary history, bridging the gap between physical money and the digital future, and when all these layers are considered together, from design and circulation to debate and decline, these coins reveal that even the smallest units of currency can tell the largest stories, reminding us that value is not only measured in purchasing power, but in the history, ideas, and collective experiences that money carries with it. And with that understanding, the story of the 2 euro cent and 5 euro cent coin stands complete, not as an ending, but as an ongoing chapter in the ever-evolving narrative of money, identity, and human exchange. Thanks for watching.